The American farm is the bedrock of the nation, and farms are about more than just food. Agriculture represents about 22.1 million jobs, and it's also a core part of our economy, bringing in about $1.5 trillion of our GDP. But this key part of America is now under threat. China is buying up our farmland. Farmers are being approached directly by Chinese buyers with offers of cash far beyond market value. The full amount of land that's been sold is not even fully known, but some estimates put Chinese ownership at around 277,333 acres of U.S. farmland, and that's as of December 2023. And while that might be just a small fraction of even just foreign-owned land, other factors are making this a particular concern. Some of this land is in close proximity to U.S. military bases, sparking threats of national security. Some land is tied to major acquisitions by Chinese buyers, like Smithfield Foods being bought up by China's WH Group. Others are concerned about theft, like the theft of American seed technology. And other incidents have raised concerns of something more frightening: agro-terrorism, the threats of Chinese agents smuggling bioweapons into our country that could destroy America's crops and decimate our food supplies. But others have pointed to a different problem, something more fundamental. What does it mean for the United States if our food security is controlled by a foreign adversary? What does it mean if we become dependent on a hostile foreign nation for our food? This threat is now being taken seriously. On July 8, 2025, there were actions taken across agencies and across party lines. The USDA, the Pentagon, the Justice Department, the Department of Homeland Security, they stood beside governors and members of Congress to announce an initiative to protect American farms from foreign threats. This was the National Farm Security Action Plan.
For them, agricultural lands and our farms, because they are a previous inheritance, are weapons to be turned against us. We see it again and again, from Chinese communist acquisition of American farmland to criminal exploitation of our system of agriculture to the theft of operational information required to work the land and beyond. All of this takes what is profoundly good and turns it towards evil purposes. But November 2024 signaled it's time for our federal government to wake up and step up, and that's exactly what we are doing under the leadership of President Donald Trump.
This is just one more arm of this octopus trying to seize control of America, and what America has to do is wake up and push back. And that's why it's just incredible to see President Trump working so hard to do just that. That's why it's so important when, I don't think ever before at USDA have we had secretaries from DHS and from the Defense Department there standing beside the Secretary of Agriculture saying food security is national security. You cannot underestimate the Chinese. You cannot underestimate all their arms that are reaching into America right now.
The plan takes particular aim at foreign ownership of farmland near U.S. military bases, and it also takes particular aim at the Chinese Communist Party. They're now taking steps to ban future Chinese purchases as well as from other countries of concern, and they're also aiming to review and potentially claw back the farmland. How does the CCP try to buy up the land? How does that actually work?
Well, back in the day, a decade ago, even on our small family farm, we were told that there were these wonderful, nice Chinese businessmen, and they wanted to buy up farmland, and if anybody was interested in selling their land, to let them know. Oftentimes, they also pay more than the fair market value. So for a lot of producers, and in particular small family farm producers, they're not thinking about geopolitical warfare. They're not thinking that this could turn into an act of terrorism or that this could be an act of war on American land. They've been so overregulated to death. Sometimes the next generation doesn't want to farm the land. And this is an opportunity for them to sell their land.
Wow, so a way to make a little extra and get out of it.
Exactly, and oftentimes I don't know that they're aware that it's the CCP. They have no idea. I mean, the CCP can use a straw man, if you will, a third party to purchase the land, to acquire the land, and then it goes into CCP hands.
I mean, what have you been hearing from people getting offered money from these Chinese buyers for their land?
It's one of the reasons. A couple things early on we did was, again, when I had an early meeting, it was in the first 2 weeks of being governor, met with a person who owns large telecommunications and started telling me stuff about the equipment they're using on their towers is all safe and they have it technologically checked, even though it's from China. Well, I knew the guy was lying to me. And so that really, I said to myself, what on earth are we doing? We have Chinese equipment on our telecommunication towers. We got legislation passed within 60 days of that meeting to have it ripped off across Nebraska. Then, shortly after that, there's some significant projects going on to replace the Cold War silos of the 60s in the panhandle of Nebraska, in southeast Wyoming and northeast Colorado. I mean, there's stories out there where people from communist China have been coming in and offering big suitcases of cash to buy land. Well, why do they want land close to what we're doing for defense? You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. So that took us to the next step to say, holy cow, if maybe they could be rumors, maybe they couldn't, but I don't put anything by it. So we got legislation passed so there's nobody from foreign adversaries are allowed to buy land in Nebraska. Really, really big deal. We had unanimous bipartisan support for it.
An Epoch Times investigation details just how much American land the CCP has gained control of. Most of the land was handed to China through the sale of Smithfield Farms, which is now controlled by the CCP's state-owned WH Group Limited. A subsidiary of Smithfield Farms, Murphy Brown, is a major hog producer in the United States, and it holds the largest land area with 132,310 acres. The next highest is China's Brazos Highland Properties, which holds 86,994 acres of American land. And following that is China's Harvest Texas with 29,705 acres, U.S. Agrochemicals Corp. with 11,263 acres, and Syngenta Seeds with 2,452 acres. The surge in Chinese purchases of America's land also took off between 2012 and 2019, mainly from these major acquisitions, although even the smaller plots of land have raised alarms over their strategic locations. In 2024, the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability called in the heads of 25 government agencies to testify. The focus was on the CCP's efforts to influence and even to infiltrate U.S. government agencies. Among these were the Department of Agriculture, and what it revealed was shocking. Not only is China buying up farms and food businesses, but given that it's also one of the largest purchasers of American food, the financial influence has potentially discouraged proper scrutiny of risks to the United States. And even beyond what's known, there's also a mystery that remains. Because of the Agricultural Foreign Investment Disclosure Act, we're actually not even able to know the full data on foreign ownership of American farms. And this also prevents any strong government oversight. And the CCP also doesn't hide its agendas. In its report on the investigations, the House Oversight Committee noted the CCP has a program of war without weapons, and this targets American critical sectors, including agriculture. The CCP even has a branch for overseas subversion, known as the United Front Work Department, and this targets not only agencies, including the USDA, but it also targets individual employees, local governments, and other key figures for influence campaigns to deepen the regime's roots into our own government.
I think that they probably have already fired the first shot, right? They've already fired the first shot by purchasing the farmland, by purchasing pork processing, by trying to get into the seed and fertilizer markets already. So they're positioning themselves for the big battle. I would just say this: I don't underestimate them. I respect them, but I don't think we can underestimate them. It's so interesting. We were raised to grow up trusting each other, and it's the cultures are just so different. I would like to think the best of every culture, but I'm afraid that the CCP culture is just so different than America. They're incompatible. I think about, well, what is Marxism? And Marxism is about promoting class warfare, and communist has its basis in that class warfare. Tell me where this has ever worked out for people. Tell me where Marxism or communism has ever worked out. I think that the communist economy is absolutely failing right now. You mentioned their own food chain problems, but I think it goes way, way beyond that. And this is they're desperate right now. They're so desperate to try to keep things together. I think that they have peaked. China, the CCP peaked probably 20 years ago, and they're in a free fall at this point in time. So therefore, they're going to be trying to do something more drastic. I think we need to double down on protecting our American food supply.
When you think about it, how do you control people? How do you control society? How do you control a nation? Control the food. Take over the food supply. Infect the food supply. Damage the food supply. That's how you can control and take over an entire society, a culture for generations. You take over the food.
Now, among the CCP's known tactics is the weaponization of natural resources. This includes the monopolies on rare earth minerals, its use of water supplies as tools for foreign influence, its attempts to grab up timber and oil and other resources, but also its efforts to buy up farmland and control food supplies beyond its own borders. The CCP has aggressively leveraged its monopoly of rare earth minerals as a diplomatic and military tool. In 2010, the regime cut off Japan's supplies to rare earth minerals, using the minerals as a bargaining chip amid the conflict over the Senkaku Islands. The CCP has leveraged other natural resources as tools for influence as well, including water. This includes the regime's upstream dams on the Mekong River, which has allowed it to control the flow of fresh water to Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, which includes water these countries need for their farms. And among the concerns raised by Congress is how control of food supplies can be used as a tool of war. The weaponization of food to destroy an adversary or control its population. What is the state of China's food supply with pollution and, swine flu, avian flu, and in what ways would that contribute to their kind of trying to push abroad to get farmland around the world?
Well, I think the figure is they've got about 18% of the world's population and about 8% of the arable land. And nobody quite knows how much of China is arable, but they've polluted so much of it that they've got a lot less than probably the official figures. And they know they've got a huge shortage. This is one of the reasons why they do stockpile so many agricultural goods and other minerals, etc., because they are afraid of being sanctioned. They're afraid of being cut off so that their international trade just doesn't exist anymore. So they're trying to sanctions-proof the economy, as Xi Jinping says. But even if they were, say, a normal country that didn't threaten people, they would still have huge worries about feeding their population.
Why is it a threat to the U.S. that China is buying up farmland here?
Well, the Chinese look at the sort of farmland holdings and purchases and investment in our agriculture sector really as potential leverage over us. When you control the agricultural supply chain or have some influence over the choke points, you've got political leverage, strategic leverage over your opponent. And that's never a position you want to be in. And obviously food is incredibly sensitive, for every country. It's even the Chinese refer to it as the baseline of strategic autonomy of a great power. You just cannot have your avowed enemy, and that's the word the Chinese use for us, to have any sort of presence or control over our agricultural networks, over our farmland. And that's simply looking at it from a sort of a food security perspective. When you look at it from a military security perspective, having a Chinese presence on land in the United States, and at least in 19 cases, pretty close to U.S. military facilities, that is a huge vulnerability.
And there are other risks as well. surveillance of military bases, the strange phenomena that many Chinese purchases of farmland, while they also happen to be very close to major U.S. military bases.
So this is a map made by USDA that shows where the Chinese own farmland. And what I would just emphasize is not just the amount of farmland, it's the location of them. Let's start here in Missouri at Whiteman Air Force Base. This is where the B-2s took off from that went and bombed the Iranian nuclear plants. So here's two farms that they own. Easily could have spotted those B-2s taking off and where they were headed. So all these other, here's Fort Irwin in California. Out here in Hawaii, you know, how important is Hawaii to the America's national security? And they have purchased this almost looks like a whole island here that they purchased as well. So it's the location of them. I'm glad that there are some states like Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska have forbid them from buying any further land. And now some states are trying to claw that land back. Now we have the national government in the same process too, trying to say, look, we're not going to let any more farmland be purchased in America, and certainly not next to military institutions.
So one thing we've been hearing a lot about is concerns about the location of the Chinese purchases of land. Some of it, people say, is by military bases or like other sensitive sites. What have you seen on that front?
Yeah, so early on, when we took term, the conversations about the new missile sites, they haven't started construction yet, but the early planning stages with the federal government, and we started hearing a few rumors of silly things happen and people driving around with big suitcases of money saying, you know, we'd like to own this land, 80 acres, whatever it is. That certainly got all of our attention, saying what on earth's going on. And so that's where we just said, you know, we've got to get in the game. So we got legislation passed really quickly where no one from foreign adversaries is going to buy land in the state of Nebraska. So.
And there are other risks as well. Some that could be potentially devastating to the United States. The threat of bioterrorism, such as with the June 2025 case of Chinese nationals who were arrested for smuggling a fungus into the United States, classified as a potential agro-terrorism weapon. And the risk the CCP could even control our food supply and use it for devastating effect.
Well, I think bioterrorism, probably the greater threat, in my view, versus crops would be livestock. Yeah. I believe this. It's really, really important. Foreign animal diseases can be catastrophic. You know, all of us in the pork industry were not surprised when the pandemic happened.
Really?
Because we had gotten a coronavirus from China in the pig industry.
I'm not aware of this.
2014, and it was called porcine pandemic and diarrhea, endemic diarrhea, and it wiped out 25% of our 100% of our baby pig population for a quarter of the year.
I had no idea.
That happened in 2014. So all of us veterinarians, everybody in the pig industry, when this happened, said, "Oh, wow, was that a surprise?" So the point simply is that. Again, we got to put our guards up. We have not had a foreign animal disease in the United States of America since 1918. So the two big ones are African swine fever, which China has had, and then also foot and mouth disease. African swine fever has gotten into the Western Hemisphere for the first time about 5 years ago in the island of Hispaniola, mostly in Haiti, which a lot of chaos there.
How real of a threat is agro-terrorism from China?
It's a very real threat. It's immensely dangerous. You know, consider what the COVID virus did, which the Chinese originally called the Wuhan virus because it came from Wuhan, China. Look at the harm that did. Our economy at the time was firing on all 12 cylinders, and in short order, it was brought to a halt, put in reverse, and America gave up freedoms that nobody ever thought they could possibly do. And it brought us to a stop and put us in reverse. And that was biological warfare. Agricultural terrorism is effectively a version of that. If you can cause say, our crops to fail, as could have happened if the most recent people that got caught had been allowed to carry this out more fully. Think of the harm that would cause. You see how we panic when eggs cost $8 for a dozen. Imagine what happens if there's a shortage of all sorts of other foods, meats, grains, breads, milk, etc. And the Chinese look at this as a potential attack vector, as a weapon. And they've got a very active biotechnology, biowarfare scheme going, and they're doing a lot of research in private. And we have no idea really what they're doing, but they have always used any effective method to hurt their opponents. So they've got a toolkit that's well stocked. And if you can cause this kind of damage to our agricultural sector, you have really been able to harm us. And that's ultimately without being able to fire a shot. We don't even think the war started. To the Chinese, it already has.
I am much more concerned about agro-terrorism and cyber attacks from China and Russia and North Korea than I am in how many fishing ships China has in the South Sea. I think that's our vulnerability are these other issues. Just recently, Chinese scientists infiltrated our system and brought in a fungus to the United States that could have really ruined the entire wheat crop as well. We really don't have any good cures for that. I'm concerned there's over 550 foreign entities involved in USDA research right now. So to that end, President Trump has already removed 70 of those scientists, and going forward, we want to eliminate any of these scientists from countries of concern from participating in agriculture. And for sure, we certainly don't need to be funding research in Wuhan, China on further gain of function type of research as well. So I'm absolutely concerned about this bigger picture. Look, I don't think China or any country has the ability to attack us physically with the Navy, with an army that we wouldn't be able to protect ourselves. But we're under constant attack from cybersecurity. Their attacks on our financial institutions, their attack on agriculture is just another example of them. I don't underestimate them anymore.
The House report on the CCP's attempts to influence U.S. agencies, including the USDA, it warned that a whole-of-government approach is needed to fight back against the CCP's programs for infiltration and influence. But so far, no major strategy has been put into effect. But steps are gradually being taken. Chinese spies being arrested, new forms of oversight going into place, and alarms gradually growing louder that a hostile communist nation may be manipulating the open system of the United States. All part of an effort to weaponize our own resources against us and to threaten the United States from within.